The Kings are in China. Can they take the throne? All right, season 2, episode 5. We're getting along with things here. It's been quite some time, but nevertheless, I'm your host for your deadline, and of course, I'm joined here by my usual suspect, Brainstorm. How you doing today, mate?
Hello, Fred. Doing good. How you doing?
Yeah, things are great. I mean, plenty of action to be catching at the moment for Counter Strike, and I'm glad that we're back to be covering it in all sorts on Crossfire. Let's start things off. Let's kick it off here. Zowie Extremesland out in China. Things are going fantastic right now for Kings. As the moment of this recording, they are sitting in the quarterfinals, and they are currently up against Maple. So, we'll get to see how that pans out. It'll probably be finished by the time this episode is uploaded. But nevertheless, great performances, don't you think, here, Tim?
Yeah, so far, Kings sitting at 2-0 in their games. They've had a 16-2 win and a 16-3 win against Karam and SZ Absolute, respectively. So, pretty clean stuff from them. Now, the one advantage that does occur to me now, Matt, with the difference, the length of time between last episode and this one, the last one we were talking about the Zowie qualifiers, I think.
True.
And now we've just skipped straight to the LAN. It's excellent. Fabulous pacing. But, yeah, anyway, so Kings so far with a 16-2, 16-3 win. Their next one is a best of 3, I believe, against Beyond Maple, who are a tie team for the quarterfinals. So groups are all best of 1s. They won both. They've got a best of 3 against Beyond Maple, who I don't know too much about, but fair enough. I'm sure it'll be a good game. And then the winner, if they win that, they'll play the winner of Flash versus Boot for the semifinals.
Yeah, and that's going to be a real cracker, I feel, because Flash and Boot we've known to be sort of those prominent Asian teams. I've actually been quite a fan of how Boot Dreamscape have been developing over the past few months, and of course Flash are just a team that you can never really brush over. They've always got sort of little bits of skill here and there, and that'll probably be King's toughest test so far in terms of how they go about in this tournament. It sort of begs the question as well, how deep do you think the Kings can run here? I mean, we have some pretty top teams in the Asian and Australasian region in this tournament. So, in some cases, it could be tougher than some would expect, but I suppose it does beg the question, how deep can they run, Tim?
I mean, in theory, I would see them getting all the way to the finals. So if they win this Beyond Maple game, which I think they should, given how clean their results have been so far, then they're playing against Flash vs. Boot, which will be a tough game. But then on the other side of the bracket, we have Vici versus SC Absolute, which should be a win for Vici, given that SZ or SZ, I think I said earlier, got 16-3 by Kings. So that should be pretty easy for Vici. Then Eclipse versus NASA. I don't know much about Eclipse. I've been watching NASA play in Zen League. They're actually quite a decent team, so that one could be close, but I think Vici would beat either Eclipse or NASA. Not that I've watched Vici play for a while, but I'm used to them being stronger. We'll see, though. Either way, though, that means that we're probably looking at, if we're going hypothetically all the way to the finals, Kings versus Vici, or Kings versus NASA, I guess. I mean, it's hard. We're still in top 8, so it's hard to pick and choose all the way to the top 2. But if we do have Kings in the finals, that's where I'd see it going, and I think that could be doable for them as well. So potential for Kings to go all the way through this one.
Yeah, and I mean, that's pretty crazy, all things considered. We haven't really seen many tournaments, especially internationally, where Australia has been that, I wouldn't say favourite, but in the sense that they have a really good chance of taking at least a final or maybe even the grand final. Something to note as well, 40 grand for first place in a $100,000 tournament. That sure is a nice amount of cash in your back pocket. But I mean,
the other thing that's fun with that as well, sorry, just jump in on that, is that Kings currently sit, if they lose everything here, they'll be in 5th to 8th, and they'll get 4 grand for that. Well, so if they win, they'll get 10 times the amount of earnings they do if they lose right now.
That's right. So, quite a bit to play for in that sense. But, even going back to what you were saying about, how far they can run and probably making the finals, I think the same could probably come. I would expect the same thing, really. I think grand finals, the way Kings have been performing, especially domestically, they should be looking at themselves in the exact same way. They should be saying, look, guys, we expect nothing but a top 2 finish. And if not, take first. So, we're going to have to see how that comes to fruition throughout the next couple of days. But nevertheless, great to see Kings out there in the international tournaments. So, that's pretty much Zowie Extremeland's all covered up. Coming into our next topic here, something a little bit more local. Greyhound, they get to join Kings in the Zen League finals. So just to jog our viewers' memories a little bit, we had the Zen League Season 2 season, which had Kings, Greyhound, Athletico, and Tainted Minds. So, in a reverse sort of sweep fashion there, we saw Greyhound. They were actually at the bottom of the standings, tied with Athletico, and they were also able to come back and get the victory in the sort of tiebreaker playoff scenario, where they actually were able to beat Athletico 2-0 and Tainted Minds 2-1. So pretty successful stuff there, I would say.
Yeah, so before we got into all the playoffs and everything, at the conclusion of the regular season of Zen League, we had Greyhound and Ath both tied in third place on 5 wins, 5 losses apiece. Tainted Minds in second, 6-4. Kings untouchable on 8-2. So the way that played out is Athletico and Greyhound played a best of 3, which was a 2-0 for Greyhound, and then they played a best of 3 against Tainted Minds, who had a 1-map advantage because they were in second rather than third, I think is the way it worked. I'm not entirely sure. But they had a 1-map advantage. So it was effectively a 2-0 over Tainted Minds as well, given that they played 2 maps against them and won both. But it was a 2-1 in the end. So Greyhound win through the playoffs and join the Kings in the Zen League playoffs, that'll be interesting. More on that in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really, all things considered, that's pretty stellar performance there coming from Greyhound. I mean, they had a little bit of a few question marks on their head, in the past few weeks, especially around sort of the Prackham situation and, of course, how they did overseas at ESEA. It left a few questions out there in the open there for Greyhound, but then coming back and just dominating these Zen League finals, or the qualifiers at least, has been really good for them there. So great stuff there from them, and they're going to be joining Tainted Minds, Kings, I should say.
Kings.
Yeah, Greyhound will be joining Kings there in the land finals, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. So, enough of that pretty much. We can also see as well in our next little topic, Kings, they pull out from Cybergamer Premier League. We haven't seen this for quite some time. CGPL, quite a prestigious league in the Australian region, and they're very particular about their rules as well. If you do leave the league halfway through, you're gonna cop a ban, and that's happened for Kings here. What do you think so far, Tim?
This is an interesting one. So, I mean, first up, I do want to say props to CG for upholding their rulebook, because this is a difficult situation to be in, right? You have potentially one of the best teams, or the best new teams in the region, like Kings, new as in the actual lineup, not new as in their players, but they've come out with a lot of firepower. They're playing really, really well, and then they want to leave your league. Like, a lot of times you'd think, we want you to stay for competition, but they've held up their rulebook, which is good. The official ruling, which you should be able to see, says Rule 2.9, leaving the league early. Teams may not exit the league early under any circumstances. Doing so will result in a 2-season ban for all players on the roster. So Kings have pulled out. They've therefore copped that 2-season ban. Their reasoning is that they've been invited to the Asia Minor, which we'll also touch on in a bit, which is directly after Extremesland, where they are now. So they're out 2 weeks there, and they want to really be focusing on the minor, because of course, you win the minor, you go to the major qualifier. This could be Kings at the major, potentially, is the chance we're looking at. So they've said, we're not going to worry about online games. We just want to focus as much as we can on the LAN stuff, and see how we go. So that 2-season ban does mean that Kings are banned for the rest of this year and the first season of next, I think, because we have we have 1 season left of this year, and then so they'll be banned until early next year, I think. So
that sounds
pretty rough,
right.
But they made the choice.
Yeah, exactly. The choice was made, and historically speaking, the choice had been made sometimes as well for some other teams. I mean, we saw the same thing happen with Immunity and their international opportunities. The same sort of thing happened where they were going overseas. I can't quite remember which tournament it was, maybe a WSG or a Faceit event, in which also conflicted with a CGPL event, and that just caused a 2-season ban for those players as well. So, it really is that way up between international tournaments and your domestic ones, and really how much you can get away with on each end of the scale. But nevertheless, props to CGPL, or Cybergamer, I should say, in the respect of them actually sticking to their rule set, simply because they want to help develop the domestic region in that sense. And Kings, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time getting back into that league after a while, but like you said, it is the decision they've made. interestingly enough, I should say, is that Kings didn't quite. The event itself, the CGPL Springland Finals, isn't actually on the weekend of an event for Kings, but they feel as though the preparation, the practice, it's all needed during that time in which they can't compete. So, fair decision.
Yeah, and it would have been difficult to try and play. Sorry to interrupt there. It would have been difficult to try and play the online seasons as well, because CG is Sunday and a Monday, and if you're overseas on the weekend, then it's pretty rough to play those make-up games. Like, it would have been doable, but decision. You don't want to have too much on your plate.
Yeah, so they're really going all out here, basically hoping that they can find some real good success overseas and use that as their momentum in the next sort of 6 months as that Cybergamer ban does wait out. But that's pretty much the Kings boot camp and how they're doing with Cybergamer at the moment. We're going to have to wait and see how that pans out for those guys. Although moving over to the actual LAN itself, CGPL Spring LAN Finals, we have our final 4 teams: Athletico, Chiefs, Greyhound, and Tainted Minds in no particular order there. You can see some pretty big names amongst those teams, of course, being the league that it is. We're going to have another stellar LAN Finals here to see, the best, rumble it out.
If I remember correctly, this is literally the exact same teams that we had, or pretty much the exact same teams we had. Of course, Atletico were...
That's right, yeah.
Actually, no, they were no longer with Darkside at the time, so they were unnamed, and they've since made a couple roster changes. But
essentially the same.
Yeah, essentially the same, and then Chiefs, Greyhound, and Tainted Minds all coming through. Admittedly, a few roster changes in there as well. But yeah, it's actually a very similar final to the one we had last time, so that'll be fun. In terms of storylines for that, obviously, it'll be good for any of those teams to win it. But Chiefs, if they win it, will be looking for their 3rd CGPL LAN straight, which would be pretty insane. And then they could go on and obviously try and win the CGPL Championship as well, which is later on in the year. But that'd be pretty ridiculous, to be honest with you. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, Chiefs have looked a bit shaky online, but it's online, so let's see how they go on LAN. Same for all of these teams, really. It's LAN is a different beast to online, so we'll see how they go when we get there. But that's November 4th and 5th, so that's 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, just around the corner, really. And it's sort of been an event that sort of snuck up on its way under the radar because...
2 weeks, sorry.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So, I mean, for Cybergamer, it's always happening during the weeks, and then, of course, LAN just pops up out of nowhere, of course. And really, I mean, you sort of said it yourself. It's going to be like a culmination of all these rosters here and their storylines and how they're actually going to cross over and clash in a way because, you've talked about it yourself. Chiefs, a little bit shaky online. They've still made it here to the finals, and as we know, they can be a force to reckon with on that LAN setting. Greyhound just been doing absolutely dominating performances so far, especially in Zen. Of course, you can't doubt Tainted Minds, especially with their new pickups like Yam. And, we're going to be able to see them in the Asian minor come to fruition. And then, of course, Athletico, a few roster changes in their boot camp, but nevertheless, great growth as well for them. So, I mean, I'm really excited to see how this pans out. It's sort of just like the Zowie Extremesland qualifier LAN that we saw a couple of weeks ago as well. It's just that, you always get into those dry moments where no one knows who the best team is because there hasn't been that many LANs, and then we go ahead and we see something like this and everyone's really excited for it.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Chiefs take it out, to be honest with you. Like,
we know
they're a good LAN team, and they'll be hunting for that 3rd one in a row. Absolutely, they'd love that. But that's going to be a really competitive LAN, I think. That'll be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And just to reiterate the point, of course, it will be November 4th and 5th at the CG studio, I believe, in Adelaide. So looking forward to that one. Of course, now moving on, we were talking a little bit about Greyhound, and they've actually made a roster change themselves. They've decided to bench Prackham and bring Dick Stacey as fill-in, at least as far as we know. He will be filling in for the remainder of their tenure so far as a team. Can you tell me a little bit about this, Tim?
Well, for one, it's fun because Dick Stacey makes back-to-back LAN finals with 2 different teams for CGPL.
That's true.
So that's always a fun one, but he's back. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Prackham, I feel like I did watch Greyhound, I'll be honest, but I didn't take that much time to really analyze what was going on for them. But Prackham never really looked super comfortable. And this is from an outsider's perspective. Of course, things in the team could be different, but
Yeah.
from watching him play his earlier teams, like when he was on Cypher, for instance, in CG, they were in CGP 2 seasons ago. He was like, a lot of the team was just set up around him fragging from the looks of things. So he didn't look like he really had that star role on Greyhound, because of course you have Gratisfaction who's going to be doing that. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's a performance thing or a team chemistry thing. Whatever it is, they've got him out and they've got Dick Stacey filling in. And Dick Stacey is like, he's a player who tends to be pretty comfortable just filling in rosters because he's been doing it for a few different teams. So hopefully he'll be a good pickup for them. I'm not sure really how it's going to go, but I think he's been fairly comfortable for them so far online anyway.
Yeah, I believe so. And really, for Dick Stacey, he's sort of in his element at this point because, as we know, after sort of leaving the Atletico roster, he was looking for that, that more rifler role, that sort of soldier, job, instead of just having to in-game lead and sort of do the strategy behind the scenes. It was more just, hey, where can I actually just frag? And I think Greyhound for this, or for Dick Stacey, is perfect in that sense because, Greyhound, especially with the addition of Dexter, and Urcast is always there as well, those two have enough strategically between each other to sort of bring the team aboard. But it's really about that firepower, especially in today's meta, about how well you can do as a team. And I think Dick Stacey coming in there is really great. By no means is that sort of a dig at Prackham at any stage as well, because Prackham, as we know, is very talented himself. I just feel like his, sort of approach on the game, whether that be strategically or, from a more insight perspective, may not be what Greyhound are after at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a look at HTV just because I'm curious. In Greyhound's last 4 games, which have all been wins, a 16-4 over Ath. Dick Stacey went 18-10, which wasn't top frag, but it's a pretty easy game. 16-2 over Chiefs. Dick Stacey went 13-6, so comfortable there. And then in a best of 2, actually no, 2 best of 1s against Darkside, Dick Stacey top fragged both. So of course stats don't tell the whole story, but he's obviously fitting in pretty comfortably with Greyhound, so seems to be working fairly well.
Yeah, so far so good for the Greyhound guys, and we're going to see how that pans out as well. Hopefully it works out for the best. Moving on now, we're actually going to talk a little bit about upcoming events in this section of the show, because it really is a wild ride in terms of the next 2 months for October, and a bit of a mess as well. The remainder of October and flowing through onto November, we have about 4, maybe even 5 events. So it really is nuts. I'm going to start touching on the first one in the list. E-League Asia Minor, I should say, is next weekend. We have Tainted Minds, Kings, and Renegades there from the Australian section of that tournament, I should say. And that's going to be in Seoul, South Korea. So what do you think so far of this, Tim?
This is a bit of a mess. I mean, everyone already knows everything about the Asia Minor situation and just the whole minor situation. If you're not up to speed, Valve came out 2-3 weeks ago and announced that the next major would be run by E-League in Boston. I think it's like the group stages are in Atlanta and the finals in Boston or something like that. But it's the E-League major Boston. And then they announced the minors, and didn't really go too well for them. The CIS minor, I think teams were given like 1 or 2 days of warning for the qualifiers to start.
Right.
And then to obviously get to the actual minor itself. But the one that concerns us is the Asia minor. And the Asia minor, unlike all the other minors, didn't have a qualifier. It had 8 invited teams, which is pretty dumb, I think. Like, I'm not going to get too political about it, but like every other region gets qualifiers and they just invite teams for us. Like, that's not fair. There's 3 or 4 Asian regions that didn't get any representation at all. For OCE, like the teams they've invited are good teams, like Tainted Minds, Kings, and Renegades. So I guess are still kind of OCE. Like, they're good teams, but I think Greyhound could have got a look in. I think Chiefs could have got a look in. Oh no, not Chiefs because Tux, but still, there's other options there that I think a qualifier would have been more fair, and same for the other regions as well. But whatever. And then the other problem is they announced it for next weekend, which is the same as the Aces ROG Masters LAN finals and the Zen League finals at PAX. So we ended up having 3 events on one weekend, which is great. And to touch on those other events, the Aces ROG Masters LAN finals are in the Philippines. in Manila Bay.
Same
Greyhound are going
weekend.
to those, and I think Atletico are as well.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a, not too much details on that one, but as far as we can tell, Atletico might be able to be playing that through sort of like a preliminary qualifier. We'll just have to sort of see.
Yeah, but the way we think it's working, and this is just based off HLTV, so your mileage may vary. Don't take this as like gospel, but according to HLTV, we have an 8-team land. So the land itself is from like October 26th until the 29th or 30th or something. We have a main qualifier, which is an 8-team land, which includes Atletico, 5 Power, and a bunch of other teams. And then the winner of that gets a spot into the regional finals, which is the main one, which Greyhound are playing at. So we could potentially have Greyhound and Atletico. If Atletico win the main qualifier to make it into the regional finals, I think. And then the winner of the regional finals, the first 2 places get 2 spots at the grand finals for Aces Rock. So
Yeah,
we think that's the way it's working.
we're not entirely sure, but nevertheless, I'm glad. Although there has been sort of overlap and crossover between these tournaments, more specifically E-League and ASUS ROG, at least we get to still have full like Australian team representation. So in the case of the Asia Minor, we still get Tainted Minds and Kings, and then moving over to ASUS ROG, we still have Greyhound there as well. So at least, whilst the tournaments are going, Australia still has its foot in the door there. And of course, you did mention as well the Zen League finals. That was at PAX, but it has actually been postponed now. So good to see there from ESL Australia just deciding, look guys, there's a lot going on right now, both internationally and nationally here for Australia. Let's, let me work with you. Let's do some negotiations and try to make things a little bit easier. So that's actually going to be moved forward a little bit.
Yeah, so there was already a clash between the Asus ROG Masters finals and the PAX finals, and then Valve came out and were like, hey, the minors then as well, and we were all just like, great. When I say we, I mean the community, not anyone else. But ESL have decided to move their finals, so which is good because the final teams, MVP, 5 Power, Kings, and Greyhound, 5 Power and Greyhound would be at the Asus quals because 5 Power are playing in the main qual, potentially the finals, which we just discussed. Kings are going to be at the minor, so MVP would have got a default win by turning out to Pac. No, that's not how it would have happened. But anyway, the point is none of the teams are available, so they've been moved to November 17th and 18th instead, which is a Friday and Saturday in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, and that'll be at the ESL studios in Sydney, just like the last season of Zen League's finals were.
Yeah, so that's pretty much, all our events wrapped up for the next month or two. So you can just tell already just how much.
Times.
Yeah, you can just get a scope of how much is really going on at the moment here in Australia. I think 4 to 5 events. So, but nevertheless, I mean that's pretty much Crossfire all wrapped up. We've sort of covered as much as we could between the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks since we've been gone. But the idea at least will be to have an episode next week and sort of cover over these next few events with a nice fine-tooth comb. And, maybe we'll get to see a little bit more later on.
Very possibly. That's the plan.
Yeah, the plan. Let's just keep in mention of that. But nevertheless, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do want to follow us on social media, of course, you can see all of our handles below on your screen. And of course, if you're a bit of an audio listener, be sure to check out the SoundCloud as well, because that's just audio only. So great if you're taking a flight or on the train, something like that. So great for anyone there at all. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope to see you next week.